Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Septian Saputra, and we are from Group 5. Today we will discuss about psychoanalysis, and refers to the book of a paper of Sigmund Freud, Creative Writers and Daydreaming. This is the member of the group. We have Sandi Muhammad Ramdani and me, Septian Bimo Saputra. Okay, next, this is the topic for discussion today. We have the first one is what is psychoanalysis. The second one is how does psychoanalysis relate to literature. The next one is describe what Freud recognized as people fantasies. The next one is who are the creative writers. And the next one is what are the differences between creative writers and daydreaming. The next one, describe the analogy of creative writers as children at play. And the last one is how does aesthetic pleasure in the literature relate to author's mind or imaginations. Okay, here we are. This is our first topic of today. We have what is psychoanalysis. Within a few years, Freud has turned his attention to the study of nervous disease. Initially influenced by Jean-Martin Charcot's investigations of hysteria, Freud developed the idea that neurosis might have a psychological rather than physiological origin. In treating a patient with nervous illnesses, Freud relied initially on electrotherapy and hypnosis, and intent on improving his hypnotic technique. He visited the school in Nancy, and it was here he was struck by the possibility that there could be a powerful mental process which nevertheless remained hidden from the consciousness of man. So, from my understanding, psychoanalysis is a method or technique that developed by Sigmund Freud to cure his patients with nervous illnesses by exploring the mental process that remain on unconsciousness mind of man. The next topic is how does psychoanalysis relate to literature. In his earlier work, Freud has appealed to literary texts, notably Oedipus Rex and Hamlet, not only to exemplify and illuminate, but even to ground some of his theoretical notions. He saw Sophocles play Oedipus Rex as expressing a universal law of mental life, and interpret fate in that place as the materializations and of an internal necessity. As for poetic and artistic creations in general, Freud wrote a paper entitled Creative Writers and Daydreaming, which view works of art as the imaginary satisfactions of unconsciousness wishes, just as dreams were. What psychoanalysis can do is to piece together the various elements of an artist's life and his works, and to construct from this the artist's mental constitutions and his instinctual impulses. Okay, there are maybe my explanations about this topic. Maybe the explanation of this topic is not detailed yet, but as we explore the following topic, we will understand better how psychoanalysis related to literature. The next topic is describe what Freud recognized as people fantasies. People fantasies is a world of imaginations that created by the people itself, and they taking it very seriously, in which they are invest a large amount of emotion in it, while separating it very sharply with the reality. The motive forces of fantasies is unsatisfied wishes, and every fantasy is the fulfillment of a wish, or correlations of unsatisfying reality. The motivating wishes vary according to the sex, character, and circumstance of the person who having the fantasy. They are fall naturally in two main groups. There are ambitious wishes and erotic wishes. In young women, the erotic wishes predominate almost exclusively, for their ambitions, as a rule, absorbed by erotic trends. In young men, egoistic and ambitious wishes come to the fore clearly enough alongside of the erotic ones. So, next we will take a look of the example of fantasies by a poor orphan boy. This is will help our understanding of what is people fantasies by Sigmund Freud. This is the example of fantasies by poor orphan boy. A question pops up: what usually a poor orphan boy wish for? There is house, parents, and affectionate feeling. These three things that what we call as wish. Another question comes: did the boy get what he wished for? There is two branches of these questions. The first answer, if it is yes, if the boy get what he wished for, then the wish become a satisfied wish, and that is the end. The boy become a happy person. And if the answer is no, or the boy didn't get what he wished for, then the wish before become unsatisfied wish. From this unsatisfied wish, the boy created a fantasies. Maybe the content of the fantasies are like this. He is given a job, finds favor of his new employer, make himself indispensable in the business, is taken into his employer's family, marries the charming young daughter of the house, and then himself become a director of the business, first as his employer's partner, and then as his successor. Then, what is the purposes of the boy to create these fantasies? Of course, the purpose is to fulfill what he wished before. And if we take a look at the content of the fantasies, these boy fantasies, we could find lots of ambitious wishes rather than erotic wishes. The ambitious wishes are: he is given a job, finds favor of his new employer, make himself independable in the business, is taken into his employer's family, and then himself become a director of the business, first as his employer's partner and then as his successor. And the erotic wishes is marries the charming young daughter on the house. Okay, I think that is my explanations about fantasies, people fantasies, according to Sigmund Freud's explanation of his paper titled Creative Writers and Daydreaming. The next topic is: who are the creative writers? Before, we already understand that fantasies is the fulfillment of unsatisfied wish. So, from that definitions, we can divide these fantasies into three categories. First, as the creative writers. a strong experience in the present awakens in the creative writer a memory of an earlier experience, usually belonging to his childhood, from which there now proceeds a wish which finds its fulfillment in the creative works. So, to simplify the definitions about creative writers, from my understanding, creative writers is people with fantasies, but he choose to pour his fantasies into creative works such as short stories, novels, and etc. And the second category is daydreamer. The adult, on the contrary, is ashamed of his fantasies and hides them from other people. To simplify these definitions, daydreamer is the people with fantasies, but they choose to hide or conceal their fantasies from the other people, and they keep it from themselves. And the last category is it become people with mental health disorder. If fantasies become over luxurious and over powerful, the conditions are late for an onset of neurosis or psychosis. Fantasies, moreover, are the immediate mental precursors of the distressing symptoms complained by our patients. Here, brought by faith branches off into pathology. Okay, that's all my explanations about who are the creative writers. Next is the detail about the differences between creative writers and daydreamer will be discussed by Sandi Ramdani in the next sessions. Thank you. That's all from me.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Sandi Muhammad Ramdani, and I would like to explain the fifth topic discussion of this chapter. And the topic discussion is, what are the differences between creative writers and daydreamers? Before it, I would like to tell that every person in this world certainly has an experience which he stay on the situation where he get an unsatisfied wish. Thus, they are fantasy to fulfillment their wish, and every fantasy is fulfillment of a wish. The difference between creative writers and daydreamers is fulfillment of wish. Creative writer, when they have an unsatisfied wish from earlier experience, they fulfillment it by making a creative writing. They are fantasy and pouring their fantasy to the creative writing such as poetry, novel, or short story, and it conformable to the book, page 101. A strong experience in the present awaken in the creative writer a memory of an earlier experience, usually belonging to his childhood, from which there now proceeds a wish which finds its fulfillment in the creative works. And while the daydreamer, when they have an unsatisfied wish from earlier experience, they fulfillment it by daydreaming, fantasying. They were daydreaming a bright future, like the story of orphan boy on the book, and it conformable to the book, page 98. And it now creates situation relating to the future which represents a fulfillment of the wish. And the second difference between creative writers and daydreamer is the value. It's on the book page 101. If our comparison of the imaginative writer with the daydreamer and of poetical creation with the dream is to be of any value. So, a creative writer more than daydreamer, because creative writer proceed a work or a creative writing like a poetry, a short story, and which it make them more valuable. 6th topic discussion is describe the analogy of creative writers as the children at play. According to the book, page 95, the creative writer does the same as the child at play. He creates a world of fantasy which he takes very seriously, that is, which he invests with a large amount of emotion while separating it sharply from reality. Yes, take an example like a boy who pretends to be James Bond. They use sunglasses and fold two finger and pretend to be James Bond, and he assumed that is his gun, but he realized that it is his hand, and he invests a large amount of emotion, so he become a James Bond, pew 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 pew, and they animate it, so the boy get pleasure. The same like creative writers. Creative writers, they fantasy to fulfillment their unsatisfied wishes by reading a creative reading. They read their works, and they animate it, so they get pleasure. The 7th topic discussion of this chapter is how does aesthetic pleasure in literature relate to author's mind or imagination. According to the book, page 102, the reader softens the character of his egoistic daydream by altering and disguising it, and he bribes us by purely formal, that is, aesthetic yield, of pleasure which he offers us in the presentation of his fantasies. And the relation between aesthetic pleasure in literature to the author's mind is a for pleasure of author. The author deliberately doesn't follow his daydream because the pure series in his fantasy is not interesting. So he changes and he disguises his work to make it more beautiful, so that the author get appreciation and satisfaction.